Right, so what we have here is we have a 500 watt 48 volt MXUS 3-phase motor. Yeah, so yeah, I don't know how you pronounce that, MXUS, something like that, and that's the number on it. That might be the serial number, in fact. We say 48 volts, and basically what I'm going to be doing is I'm mounting it onto a 18-inch alloy motorcycle wheel rim, and this wheel rim is actually marked up as a 1.60 times 18. Now, I've used an online website which is a spoke length calculator, and to use the spoke length calculator you put in your wheel diameters and you put the measurements of your motor in. Now, if you're using the same, if you want to create one of these using one of these Chinese alloy rims, you can buy these rims for to the UK posted. They cost about £120 for the two rims, so £60 each. Yeah. Now, by the time you put it through the spoke length calculator, it will essentially come up with a spoke length of size 300. So basically 300, that is to give you why they come up with that. Yeah, so basically two of them add to 300 to give you the span across. Now they're actually spokes of 15 centimeters in length. So by the time you mount them through the holes on your hub, on your motor hub, and then into the rim, it takes a 15 centimeter spoke. And I know this because I've already done it once. Now, in order to mount these, it means you've got to drill the holes out on the hub, and to fit them I found the best way, because they won't fit nicely inside the inner rim area or inner hub area. You mount them all with the riveted part on the outside. So these are going to have to be drilled out to 3 point something. I think it's about 3.2, 3.5 mil holes, and I'm going to go and do that next. Okay, so I've actually found out that you've actually got to drill them all out to 4 millimeters, because the 3.5 mil drill will still not allow the spokes to pass through the holes. So you've got to go to 4. That is the nearest. But I found out from previous experience that it works fine, so it's not an issue with it. So basically I've stuck it on my vise here, put a cloth down so I don't scuff the finish of the motor up too much, and then I simply drill it, go around with the drill, and see, it's very easy to do. I'm going to go around and do all of them, and then I'm going to move on to spoking up the wheel. I've started to do is I've put all the spokes in on one side. As I said, I've put them all with the rivet head on the outer edge, so they're all sitting there, and I'm just doing this on my knee. I'm not using any fancy equipment. Now I'm working around and I'm putting the spokes in on the opposite side. Now, last time I did this, I didn't do it this way. I did one side, I spoked it up on the wheel, and then I did the opposite side, and I tended to find that the spokes that I'd already put in were in the way of me putting in the spokes for the other side. So this time I'm trying it a different way. So I'm just basically working round and I'm putting all the spokes in, nice and simple. Then once they're all in, I'm going to have a go at presenting them up to, or offering them up, as the usual expression they use on TV, offering them up to the rim, and see how they actually all work out. Okay, so I'm starting this off, and it's important to try and get the first two spokes in correctly. When you look at the edge of the rim, you've got holes which are for one side of the motor or the hub, and holes which are for the other side of the hub. So you can see here that these two are angled, and they are presenting themselves to this side. They've got a bias to them. Yeah, they're also offset from the center. So I've put the first two spokes in, and you can see how that looks. So essentially, one spoke here comes from the left here and over to the right on the rim, and the one on the right on the hub goes over to the left. And we're just going to cross them, as you can see here. Now you also need to try and make sure that each spoke pair that you put in goes in the same manner. So effectively what I'm going to do next is I'm going to skip this spoke here, and I'm going to go to the next one, and that one there is going to go into that hole there, noting that that hole there is for the other side of the rim. So that one's going to go there, and this spoke here is going to go to that hole here, and that one has to be presented up and over the top of this spoke. Because I'm doing this just with my hands all busy, this is going to be a little bit awkward for me to try and do. So I'm holding the camera in my mouth, that's why I'm shutting up. I'm not doing it too tight. You only want to put it on by say 3 or so turns. So that's that one. Then to fall in line with that spoke there, this one has to cross over to here, and these are the nipples, and they fit into these motorcycle rim holes perfectly well. So there you can see, there's the first four, and all the other spokes which I've got in for the other side, they're all dangling around down there, and they're not getting in the way, at least not at the moment. So I'm going to work my way around doing this and see how I go. Right, so you can see that they go in quite easily overall, as long as you stick to the same order, put in the right hand spoke under the left hand one and working round and not making any errors. So that one goes under, that one goes under, that one goes under, that one goes under. Yeah, so I'm basically down to the very last two. Now as you work round, you can find that some of these spoke nipples tend to get stuck over on the rim, and you just need to readjust them, maybe slacken them off a little bit. But you can generally find that they will all come over and get into position with no real problems. So I'm just going to put the the last two in. You can see here the length is perfectly okay. You've just got to push them into position so that they line up, and I've done all this with my fingers. I've not used any tool, but I do have a tensioning tool which I will be putting onto the square sections on the spoke nipples, and I will be tightening them up. But I will just do it a little bit, then I'm going to flip it over and do the other side. Right, okay, so the other side's coming together quite well as well. Now when it comes to putting these in, you see you've obviously got to make sure that you start on the first two spokes correctly, and I'm also trying to do the spokes in a similar manner to how the spokes are done on the other side. You can see how this spoke here is underneath that spoke. So what I'm doing here is this spoke here is underneath this spoke, and it's stepped out by a few degrees. You know, it's the next position along on the hub, but it's all working quite well. It's going in quite easily. Just got to make sure that none of these spokes, as you're working round, get caught in a position where you can't retrieve them out, because that will make it a little bit awkward for you later on. So you need to try and make sure that they're all in a good position. The other thing to bear in mind is if you get spokes which are too long, then it's going to make it awkward for you to fit them in. You see here, these just pass nicely over the spoke hole, or the nipple hole there, so you can get them in. As long as you leave all the adjustments on the nipples loose, then you should be able to fiddle them all in quite easily. Don't tighten them up too much until they're all laced in and you're ready to start tightening them. Then you start to put a similar amount of thread on each one of the nipples. Try and match them all up, and then we're going to get to a point where we need to start to tighten them up a little bit more in a bit at a time, and until they feel like they're not loose. Then we'll put it in some sort of a frame, and we will check the spoke alignment, the wheel alignment, what's it called? We will true it up basically, and then it'll be ready for having the tyre fitted. So that's all the spokes sort of relatively tight now. I've got them all set with about 3mm of thread left to go into the spoke nipples, and that is basically a point which I find works out quite well. There's plenty of thread inside the spokes, inside the nipples, so that's perfectly okay, because you can tell that because when I was positioning the spokes up, they would only just pass inside of the rim, so they could go into that position. So there's around about 6mm or more, in fact, of thread on each one of these spokes. So that's perfectly good. Now it's at a point where it needs to be set up and trued on a frame, which is not very hard to do, and basically work around using this spoke key. So, as I said, the next stage is to true it up, and the way I do this is simply by getting an old frame. This happens to be a 1950s Flying Flea frame, Royal Enfield, and bolt the rim in, yeah, both sides. Then just cable tie a pencil, 2 cable ties and a pencil, and adjust the thing backwards and forwards up to the rim edge. Then I have to put a bit of a lean on this because it's not balanced that well. Put my knee here. So this is a basic simple setup. You could mess around and put some clamps on something. You'd probably put it on a kitchen table if you had to, but basically when we just spin this and we check, you see I've already been tweaking this, and you can see the pencil is not really moving very much, and the gap between the rim and the pencil rubber is not really out at all. Now this has only required slight adjustment. Essentially, if you need to move the wheel edge this way to the left, then you tighten up the spoke points on the left at the point where the gap is. So you do 2 or 3 points. So you do this one, then this one here, and you possibly might put a bit of a turn on that one down there, and potentially slightly loosen the ones on the opposing side, and then you recheck the gap. And that's what I've been basically doing here. It's only taken me around 10 minutes, and I'm actually, you know, I don't think that's too bad. I'm not that much of a purist when it comes to these things, as long as the thing doesn't throw me off. You can see there's a slight gap there, but we're essentially within 1.5 millimeters of being okay with this. Now, I would say potentially after you've done 50 or so miles on the thing, possibly put a pencil next to it again with the tyre on, and just recheck it, because these spokes may shift around a little bit, so there's no harm in truing it up again a little bit later on in the construction. But yeah, there's a little bit of a gap there, so if I put my spoke nipple key in on there, or spoke key on there, and we slip that on, and then we tighten it by going clockwise, a little touch there, and likewise down here, just a little touch. So these are quite tight now. Yeah, it's closed up. It's closed up the gap just doing that. There's not as much of a gap there now. So you don't really need to put the pencil on the other side of the frame. If you do it to one side, then that should be good enough. The slight gap there. Anyway, I'm going to play around with this thing for a little bit longer, but not very much, because I think that is essentially pretty reasonable.